Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Brawn Body Health and Fitness Podcast. Today, I'm excited to welcome on one of my most distinguished guests ever, the legendary Coach Bob King. He really lives up to his name. He is the king of sports training and sports program development, as far as I'm concerned. He has been working in the sports field since the 1970s. He has a 7-year history as a NBA strength and conditioning coach, 7-year history as an MLS soccer strength and conditioning coach. He's a gold medal speed coach for the U.S. Skeleton. He's a 3-time Super Bowl champion. He was the strength and conditioning coach for the Dallas Cowboys during their Super Bowl run in the 1990s. And he has coached so many professional athletes across so many different sports. And he is such a wealth of knowledge as it relates to speed and athlete development. And I'm super thankful for the time that he was able to give us and this amazing episode that we put together with Bob. Before we begin, I have a quick word from one of our sponsors. Bob, welcome to the show. Excited to have you on today, man.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. I'm excited to talk about our subject matter today.
Yeah. So for people who aren't familiar with you, could you perhaps share a little bit about yourself and all the amazing accomplishments you've made through the world of strength and speed development?
Sure. I would like to say that I think I'm probably the luckiest guy on the planet because opportunities just showed up at the door and I answered. So I'm a coach. I started coaching back in here it comes, 77, 76, 77. I played college football, through those 4 years at Texas Tech. Went into coaching and just, that was me. I'm a coach. So I stuck with it. This is in the 70s, early 80s, and I had the opportunity to be exposed to some really, really quality people in terms of coaches. I wanted to learn the profession, so I traveled a lot. I went around the country, and whether I attended a clinic or just went and visited with somebody, I had the opportunity to just be in the right room at the right time. And just to kind of summarize that, what happened was I was coaching high school football and track, doing the strength conditioning program as well at the same time. And I met people and so forth, so on. And I had an individual, a kid that played basketball, whose dad was the general manager for the Dallas Mavericks. And he seemed to be interested in what I was doing. And you have to understand that during this time frame, what we know today was not there. There was only 3 or 4 strength coaches in the NBA at the time. I was the 4th or 5th guy in the NBA in those days. And so I met a guy that really influenced me a lot. I want to give shout out to Randy Smythe from Speed City back in the day, who really turned me on to the hurdle ladders that I just became in love with. And so what we ended up doing is, doing stuff together. And I traveled, did some camps. Then he introduced me to Mike Woysick at the Dallas Cowboys, and he brokered the deal to where, hey, Bob, why don't you work with the Cowboys during the Mavericks off season while the Cowboys were ramping up for training camp. So there was no conflict. Unfortunately, the Mavericks weren't going very deep into the playoffs at the time, so I was available. So I was going. The way it worked out, at one point in the 80s and early 90s, I would coach high school football during the week, go to Dallas Maverick practice in the morning. There was not much in-season work for me to do in the off-season, in the in-season for the Cowboys. So I would coach a high school game on Friday night, go to Reunion Arena and be at a Maverick game or practice on Saturday, and Sunday I'd be at the Texas Stadium for a Cowboys game, and then it's just cycled for several years. And so during that time, I had keys to a lot of big arenas, and so had opportunities, and and then as a result, you're going to meet people, and as time went on, and I may get my chronology fouled up. I say this a lot. It's not a bad thing, and it's not, it's no big deal, but there's 2 kinds of coaches: those that have been fired and those that are going to be fired. And so the Mavericks changed ownership, and we all got let go. And when I got let go with the Mavericks, the Cowboys said, come on, let's go. And so now I'm traveling across the country to NFL stadiums with the Cowboys. And I met somebody who came in for speed training. It turns out they were involved in the skeleton event with the Olympics. And he was involved in the husband and wife team were involved in the administration of the United States Bobsled and Skeleton Federation on the skeleton side. Well, the next thing I know, I'm flying up to Lake Placid, New York, doing a speed training for the skeleton wannabes. We only get three men and women each, and so there's 42 athletes up there at Lake Placid. Now we're starting to do skeleton training, and I'm in Salt Lake City. Then I'm in Calgary, Canada, and we're training because the Calgary had an ice track indoor. This just went on and on and on, and so at the same time, when I was with the Mavericks, the team physician became a friend of mine, and we all got let go. Well, he ends up as a team physician with the Dallas Burn, which is now FC Dallas. And he called and said, "How about soccer?" I go, "Sure, why not? I'm doing the Olympics and the NFL and NBA. I haven't done this one yet." And so I did that for 5 years. I can't remember how it went. I went to Mavericks for 7 years, first strength coach they ever had. The Cowboys for 6 years. We had that Super Bowl run for the 90s, three of those. Then I did the Dallas Burn for 5 years, I believe. I did the Olympics. I'll talk about the Olympics separately in a minute because that's unique. I did the Olympics where my teams won two golds and a silver medal, gold on the men and women's side and a silver on the men's side. And then I can't remember what else. Little high school team won a couple of state championships while I was there. I was the defensive coordinator. During that time, I got a call. I retired from coaching to watch the King boys play on Friday night. I got a call from a friend of my wife who said, "We're starting football at this little private school. Are you interested in coaching?" I go, "Why not?" So I started a football program at a private school here in Dallas, and took them through about a 5-year stretch. And that was a great time because I'd been to the Super Bowl, the gold medals, I did everything I mentioned. Well, we got whooped, and I knew it going in. We're an expansion team, and I called a buddy of mine. I said, "Randy, come on, we're going to go do this thing together." So we started the program up, and we went 0-9. We went 0-9, 2-8, and 4-6. And after 3 years, we turned it over and said, "All right, you're ready to go." And 2 years later, they competed for the district championship. So we had done a good job of building a program there. So there's a lot going on. And what I'm saying when I say this is that I've had the opportunity to be around some very incredibly unique situations and some phenomenal people, whether those people were general managers or coaches or athletes or associates. I mean, just the exposure was phenomenal. And I like to think I tried to apply the smartest guy in the room, and that is by just sitting and listening. Just shut up and be quiet and watch. And I think that helped a lot. Let me just say this: with the USOC, I got my first experience with SST, Sports Science Technology. So we had PhD people from Colorado Springs coming out to Lake Placid for training, and that's where I was introduced to dartfish and some of the good video technology that was around at the time.
Right.
You might jump in. Let me come up for air.
I was going to say, you said before you're a lucky guy, and it certainly seems like you're in the right place at the right time for pretty much everything. That's an impressive career from coaching in the NFL, leading to Super Bowl championships, coaching speed for the USA Skeleton, and having gold medal athletes. 7 years in the NBA, 5 to 7 years in the MLS. I mean, you've kind of got every credential you could ask for. It seems like you've done it all.
Well, it was a great opportunity. Like I said, we went to France for training camp in the Dallas Burn days because they were the World Cup champions. So we figured we'd go play the best. So who's going to turn down a trip to Paris? So we spent about a week or 10 days there for training. And it's fabulous. And so where that goes is this. Let me just kind of introduce a little bit of the training aspect of it. It really taught the message of speed and conditioning. Those two elements were obviously very prevalent in everything I did. Some of the athletes only had seconds. When I say seconds, the skeleton athletes had, I don't know, I can't remember what it was, no more than 2 seconds to sprint with the sled, and then what they call load. They would have to load and ride the sled down. So anywhere from 2 seconds to whatever the say 400 meters is, 44, 45 seconds.
Right. So you have a very short window of time that you need to get to top speed and maintain it for, a short duration. But like you said, there's a conditioning element to that because not everyone can go at top speed for, say, 45 seconds, like you said, for the 400-meter event.
Right, and the deal about that is, it's the repetition of it. So, I don't know where to start with this little anecdote here, is that I was in Lake Placid. I had 42 athletes from around the country, and I had to figure out how to communicate to them because most of them, when you're an Olympic athlete, if people don't know what a podium athlete is, during the non-Olympic years, the world championships are the off-year Olympics, so to speak, and you identify podium athletes who are the individuals the USOC is going to see as somebody that has a chance to gain a medal and stand on the podium. That's where the funding goes and all the perks and things of training ability or having access to training. That's where those resources. The rest of them are usually trying to raise money to train and to work certain hours so they can train certain hours and travel and pay their own way to Lake Placid or Calgary or wherever we're training, Salt Lake City in the winter. And so what happens is you have people from all over the country, and I had them in this one room, and they all have coaches. Everybody has a different coach. Everybody has got a different voice in their ear on what they're supposed to do. And I'm the team coach. So now I've got to convince them to listen to me. And so by moving around and dealing with different sports and different athletes, and what happens is, let me just kind of frame this. If you are in a school, there's a good chance, and I'm going to go on the high end, that student athlete maybe started in 5th grade, 7th grade, 9th grade, 11th grade, and has been so-called in that system. None of these athletes were. I would get players that were, I was their third guy. They've been with teams and traded or cut and whatnot. So I might have been their third, voice in their ear. And that goes all the way back to when they were in high school, college, now pro. So I had to simplify the language to gain trust that I could be trusted with what you hear me say and I do is going to work. So at Lake Placid is when the 0 to 10 world became, full circle, because again, they've got 10 meters and they got to be on the sled, and my work's done. So we came up with our first kind of Bobism or saying, and that is, and it goes like this: if steps 1 and 2 are good, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 will be fine. And we emphasized it, speed wise like that for emphasis, because 1 and 2, everything else will take care of itself. And so from there, the athletes understood that I was serious, that I could help everybody, because everybody knew if steps 1 and 2 were faster, their load time, because we had what's called a load time from the start to on the sled and then the rest of the run. And so from there, you might say 0 to 10 was born. And during an off season, I had one of my Maverick players, and we're sitting there catching a breath, and we're working individually. And I asked him, I said, well, how do you know when to retire? He goes, when I lose my first step. Well, what struck me by that was he answered it at the end of my sentence. When the verbal period was put, he answered it. So he didn't have to go, I've never thought about that, I'm not sure. And that's boom. That solidifies 0 to 10 as being the answer to the sports world or speed training world. So there's closing speed, there's acceleration, there's separating speed, there's all those different types of speed. But step 1 and step 2 will make or break you.
Definitely. If you don't start on the right foot, then how is the rest going to make up for it? It makes sense. And that applies to more than just speed training, right? If you're going for a 3 or 5 rep max squat or deadlift, if your first rep is crap, you're probably not going to get the other ones. It kind of, everything falls apart. So if you start on the right foot, the rest just falls into place, like you said.
It does.
So when it comes to speed training and placing having the ability to make an athlete faster at whatever distance they're training for, maybe it is just a 10 meter, like you said, or maybe it's a 100 or 200 meter event.
Yeah.
The focus, from what it sounds like, and from what I'm taking away from what you just said, is on quality, not quantity of training volume. You have to make sure that you have a good first step every single time. And once the quality of that training starts to deteriorate, that's when you cut it. Is that correct?
Yes, I would say definitely. And there's a couple of, parenthetical statements that go with this is that um, we we don't do anything in percentages. We go fast. Let me back up. We warm up and then we go fast. And so I was in the, still this churns through the 80s in the track, how fast, coach? 70, 80%? Oh, go 75%, And so I never could measure that, as far as like, I can't tell what he's running. So we did several things. Um, Another mixed bag. I was reading the resources that we had called Track Coach, and there was a publication, and at the back of the publication it had what's called World Roundup, and there, anecdotes from around the world would be published from coaches and athletes, and there was two things that struck me. One, an American, I can't remember his name, but our best 10,000 meter guy had gone to London to train, and there were several of the Ethiopian athletes, and so everybody knows everybody. You see them all the time at meets, and not just the Olympics, but in, throughout the circuits and so forth. And so they get together and train together. And the American comes back and he says, "Oh my God, I cannot believe the pace they train at." And so I just kind of looked at that and go, it's an interesting concept. Now I know it's 10,000 meters, but how come that wouldn't work everywhere? And so we started to evolve our training into a lot of different areas. So for example, when I trained 16 and 3,200 meter runners, we drop mileage at some point. How far, coach? 5 miles? No, I don't know. I'll see you in 40 minutes. So I'm going to see you sustain a 40-minute run. We have a trail off campus, and go do 40 minutes. And then I could regulate it throughout the season. And I'll just make this up because I don't have the numbers with me here, but we go 20 minutes, then 25, then 30, come back 20. And so we build up on minutes. And so that turned out to be hugely successful with our athletes who competed as well as they could. Now, that said, I will tell everybody that comes in, everybody I train is learning to be a sprinter. Now, I don't care if you're a shot putter, because the number one element is speed in the ring. You cannot be slow in the ring and get the shot put anywhere. You must have speed in the ring, and that goes for the discus. So we train everybody to be a sprinter. So it starts with the mechanics. Mechanics produce efficiency and so forth. Now, what we tell them to keep them from freaking out, like, I'm not a sprinter, I'm a goalie. I don't go anywhere. Well, if you train to be a sprinter with me while we're doing the work, because of the time that you invest in your sport, we call it your sports posture will take over at the time it needs to. It's not going to ruin you that you're running mechanically down the field like a sprinter and can't play the implement, whether it is a soccer, baseball, anything. You will get back into your sports posture because the time element is way disproportional for what you do with me versus the time in practice and competition.
It kind of blows my mind, just the kind of principles that you use. They're simple, but it's stuff that, like, I never would have thought of. I never would have thought of the point of, like you said, running faster, right? So when you worked with endurance athletes, you gave them that 40-minute timed run, and you said, just go run. Like, I'll see you in 40 minutes. It wasn't you have to run this, certain split, this certain like pace, that sort of thing. It was run, and I'll see you in 40 minutes. Yes. It was simple. And I think in general, we get so lost in some of the data sometimes. It's great to have data for research purposes and analytics. But sometimes we get so caught up in it that we kind of lose sight of what actually works. Does it really matter if an athlete is running a 5:30 average pace in their training if it has little to no carryover to their actual competition?
You want to win the race. And so the training matters. You want to log all what you said for the athletes' benefits. So but athletes want feedback. And if I just said, you look good. Well, that's not really what, as you go up to higher levels, they want to know the real nuts and bolts of what they're doing. Now, that said, let me put it like this. I told you about everybody. I trained everybody to be a sprinter. And again, back with, I think 5,000 meters as far as I went, because I had a guy that I was working with for the Olympic trials, and he was a 5K guy, 5,000 meter rather. And so if I train everybody how to be a sprinter, then when I was working with 16 and 3,200 meter guys and girls, it would be, now I want to teach you go out and run 40 minutes. And then on other interval days and speed days, I'm going to train you how to win a 100-meter race because on the 16 and 32 you're on the oval, and so it starts sooner than that. It'll start around 400 meters. Some great athletes will go 6 to 800 meters, but if we're close at 200 meters, I want you to win because you know how to run a 200-meter race. And that happens all the time. You see them just outside the anomaly of the individual who just sits there and drafts or whatever for 6 of the 8 laps, and then at the 800 just says goodbye. If you're in a race, you need to win a 200-meter race. That's the way I approached it. And you can always see it on our track, on our meets. Our guys and girls that all of a sudden at 200, they would take off, even if it meant for them just placing and getting points for the team. If it was 5th, they were still going to win that 200 meters to get those points.
Right. And that's applicable for, like you said, any distance. If you're running a 400, yes, own the second half of that 400. If you're running an 800, own the last 25%. It doesn't matter what distance you're doing. You have to own the end. And there's kind of an art to that, right? You want to leave enough in the tank energy-wise, yes, so to speak, in order to give you that kick towards the end of the race.
Yes.
And that comes with
You're
time.
Exactly right.
That comes with time. That comes with practice. And like you said, intentional training. So you didn't go out and smoke your athletes any day, right? Any coach can go in there and smoke an athlete in training and call it conditioning.
I'm glad you're saying that. I am so glad you're saying that, because that has got to go away.
Right.
That has got to stop. And I will promise you this, and I'm short on data, but I will promise you that my athletes, any athlete I was in charge of at any level, has run less than any peer at their level, because we found this thing out. Back to the 10,000 meter people training fast. We did a deal, and this is the coolest thing I've seen in a long time. We have what we call high speed 110s. Now that matters. 110 yards, that's 100 meters. And so it's a speed conditioning, speed endurance thing. Every Saturday we're on the track at 11 o'clock. And so no matter what time of year, because if it's summer, if it's summer, we want to start touching the heat and whatnot. But 11 o'clock, and about once a month, every 3 weeks, we do high speed 110s. We do 600 meters or 110 yards, and that's it, just 6. And we want you to run at 95% of your perceived effort. The first one we call a freebie, because you're trying to get your gear down. Now, to use a round example, if you're running 12 flat and that's a good time for you, don't go over 12.2 and don't run under 11, 11.8. So keep 3 to 4 tenths range and just consistently do that. So what we would do on Saturdays, because of my background, that was our 110 day. We would go out and run anywhere from 8 and then 10 and 12 and 14 110s on Saturday, with spreading out the high speed. We did the high speed stuff, and we found that guys were pretty much toast because they didn't do it very often. We ran them so that if you ran 12 flat, 12.1, 11.9, 12 flat, 12.4, we're done. This is not suck it up and power through it. This is to run fast. So if your time is 12 flat and you're running 12.4, 12.5, we're finished. And so most of the time we would get 6. I'm the timer, so I can dictate it. And so what we did was we'd run that. Then we came back the next Saturday to run our regular timed intervals, which were like a 17:45 rest work relief ratio. And so all of a sudden, the guys, those slower intervals were faster. Their body remembered what they did a week ago, and now the whole thing was going faster. So if a guy was running around 16 and his 110 strides, he was down around 14.5. And so the high speed did 2 things. One, it just made us faster. Secondly, the conditioning elements there, because the way we did it on the high speed, you ran, then you had a 3 to 5 minute break. And at 3 minutes, I raised my hand at the other end. If you're not ready, you signal no. At 5, I raise my hand. We're either going or you're done. And that formula has worked since the start to this day. And it's just been a phenomenal for speed development and the endurance element.
That's amazing, Bob. And again, I love the focus on quality, not quantity, right? This isn't
Hmm.
a conditioning kind of drill. You want to make people faster. You want athletes to be able to increase their sprint speed. And while doing something like, 300 burpees will leave them, absolutely gassed, that's not going to make
Hmm.
them run faster. That's not specific as far as the adaptation you want to impose on that athlete.
Well, I'm fond of saying this: hard doesn't mean good,
Right.
and difficult is easy to implement. And so,
Yep.
it's like, I'll do not build a monument to yourself when you get into program design. That's my program design. I think is ultimately my bread and butter. But do not build a monument to yourself because, hey, look at this program, it's killer. Well, yeah, it's doesn't mean it's good, but it's massive. So that's the tricky part. And I will say this: in our summer program, we have athletes from everywhere. They're boys, girls, mostly high school and college, and all the sports. And 100% of my athletes have gone back to their sport in college or high school and successfully accomplished their conditioning test. And we have a method. That's a whole nother story. We have a method for how we accommodate all these different types of tests coaches have for their athletes that we have to deal with, that they're trying to get ready for. It's just impossible to do all the different tests, but at the same time, we found a way to circumvent the group aspect and still achieve what we want.
Right. And that's a whole nother element, like you said, is, you get college
Yeah.
athletes and a coach will be like, okay, well, when you come back, we're doing a mile run. And if you don't make this time, then you're not on the team. And that measure has no carryover to
Oh yeah.
sprint speed or their ability to perform in a game. It just is a general measure of, cardiovascular endurance in that sense. So, like you said, it can be difficult to
Hmm.
balance both sprint training, running faster, with the endurance piece because they're opposite ends of the training spectrum. But it sounds like you do it quite well. What's been your kind of secret to that? Do you use a very individualized training approach, or do you kind of balance the workout days and speed days with more low intensity, steady state training days? Or how do you go about balancing speed and endurance at the same time?
Oh yeah. I'm glad. That's a great question. Like we rehearse this or something, because that is built into our system.
Right.
What we do or operate, and this is just where it evolved. It's just the light goes on, and I said, "Hey, here's what we're doing. We do themes." Okay, so for example, in my speed program on a summer basis, where we have the freedom to do more of what we want, we operate on themes, and it goes like this: Monday is 0 to 10. That's our first step training day. And that involves all the gadgets we use, whether it's cables or just whatever we do. And we've got that menu is huge. Tuesday is change of direction. And it's just generic. And so here's here's my opinion. And so you work on this. I don't think there's but one way to go forward, one way to shuffle, one way to go backwards, and one way to crossover. And so, in other words, forward, back, lateral. And so, um, try to get this quick. We do generic change of direction. Soccer players, basketball players, the footwork's going to be the same, because I found out in the NFL offensive linemen were just like the front court players of the NBA. I mean, the footwork is short and quick and choppy. And so, I develop a drill for the basketball and just take it to the offensive lineman. And it worked. And so, what we ended up doing is putting these themes together and have the change of direction on Tuesday. Wednesday we called 0 to 30. We took our runs on out further so we could control them. We didn't want to go any further because it would take all day coming back and recovering. So at 30 you're done. Okay. Thursday was our as sport specific as possible change of direction. And so we had a bag of drills we had for basketball, we had for soccer, and all these other sports that were change of direction kind of things. And then we narrowed it down to we have court sports, tennis, basketball, volleyball, and we had field sports like baseball, soccer, football, and lacrosse. And so we try to combine those to come in with a sport specific change of direction on Thursday. We don't run on Friday. It's just a strength day because Saturday we're on the track, 110s and high speed stuff. And so The themes are what we use to establish how do we, address everything all these athletes need without burning them out or out being boring because we're doing so much repetition. It's not the adaptation's done. And so from that, we started creating a whole bunch of different variations. And so, real quick one is we learned how to use the medicine ball for a lot of stuff. You put the medicine ball in your hands on the ladder, your feet better work. You don't have any hands to help propel, and so we have, we just say to the athletes, teach the feet, teach the feet, and so we'll put the medicine ball in their hand. Well, we need transitions. We think there's a huge amount of time. And now, when I say time, it could be guarding somebody or escaping somebody. Transitions are huge. So some of our drills, so for example, with both the hurdles and ladders, we have an endpoint, and we will sprint to a cone at some farther away. So say I do a half a ladder, something like carry a medicine ball with two hands in the middle of your body, so you're not cheating with it. You go through the ladder, drop it to the side, sprint to the cone. So you get your arms back and you should accelerate. So there's three transitions there. One, from stop to start. Two, when you get rid of the implement, get rid of the medicine ball and turn into the run. And three, finish correctly, which is not so much a transition as just like maintain. And so we started doing these kind of things, and it's like, okay, we have what we call the hurdle ladder alley, where we run in between them and we go through each of them. We have the hurdle ladder straightaway. And so we started developing transitions to work on keeping speed, let's say high speed in change of direction or transition. So we started just playing with it.
Right. Now, one of the things you mentioned there was you used the hurdle ladder a lot. There's a lot of
Yeah.
debate in the sports industry about what is the most effective way to train speed. Should athletes use hoops? Should they use ladders? Should they do hurdles? What's the most effective way? It certainly sounds like you like the hurdle ladders and the different drills that come with that, the alley, the straightaway, and so on. So is that something that you found effective long term, or have you kind of played around with other kind of speed tools, I'll call them? So
We have the tools. We have the resistance trainings and the overspeed training. So here's the deal. Um, our 0 to 10 and 0 to 30 days. The hurdles and ladders become really kind of an extended warm up, because we may do half a ladder and 10 hurdles. And so we're going to ensure heat. We tell them, get your grease pumping, and we stretch and do whatever, but the heat, the internal heat's what I'm really after. And so it wakes up everything, because we're not all starting at the same point. And so you can watch as they kind of go through the toys and see, kind of where they're at. And so we get them warmed up. And this was really a cool thing that we stumbled onto. And so we do the hurdles and ladder, and I got to thinking, man, that's it's a 3-foot step. It's a 19-inch box. We got to fix that. And so we started implementing what we call speed breaks. And so depending on the space we have, we would sprint anywhere from 20 to 30 yards during about 12 to 14 drill break. And so we do the apparatus, the hurdle or ladder, speed break, and then grab a drink. And usually that's when I would make a change. And so the speed break, we do 1 or 2 30-yard sprints and get their stride, get back into sprinting. Don't get so specific. You have a short, choppy stride now. And so what we discovered, this was so cool. We would be early on when we do that, they go back to the apparatus, and all of a sudden they couldn't maintain their step. Because why? The body remembers what it did last. And so the last thing they did was open, depending on the athlete, maybe a 6-7 foot stride. Well, they came back, their body wanted to do that on a 3-foot stride. And so it was so cool to watch, like, okay, wait a minute, this is what's happening here. And so now we're forcing turnover because they don't have the length to get the stride out there. So speed breaks, if anybody's taking notes or something, if you're doing gadgets, we call them, you better use speed breaks, because you're missing a huge benefit that comes from doing that.
right. That's very good advice, Bob. I just think back to my own high school football days, and we used to do kind of like a bag drill. We didn't have a speed ladder at the time. We just had bags that we kind of placed where the rungs of the ladder would be. And we would jump over them and do hurdle hops, and we would run over them and run between them.
Yeah.
But we never really changed the distance that they were spaced. We never really changed where we started and where we finished. It was just
you
Yeah.
go through the bags. And then
You
the
got to
next
do
day at
that.
practice, you go through the bags again. So it's amazing how, even at the time, the coaches probably didn't think about, what would happen if we moved these bags a little bit further apart or a little bit closer together? What would happen if we started tweaking some of these small variables? And that really speaks to the importance of attention to
Yes.
detail when it comes to not only speed training, but all athletic training in general. You have to be able to sweat the small stuff. And if you don't, then you're not going to get the most optimal result out of the training that you're implementing.
What I was going to say about the hurdles and stuff is we have 3 different spacings. Um, and so this is back in the day, like I said, I was still dressing and running with the athletes to an extent where I would play with it. And so our standard spacing on the hurdles is 3 foot, 10 to 12 hurdles. And so with 12 hurdles, one day I, did the what if kind of thing. So, no big deal. We moved 12 hurdles out to a 4-foot spacing, known today as the spatial illusion. So at 4 foot, it's not huge, but 4-foot spacing for some people is like, God, that's a long first step. And so the way it works is when they run, you can see it every time they start running, and there's different patterns. And about the middle, it's hard to say, maybe 5 through 8, you see it looks like a good, comfortable speed turnover, stride turnover. And then all of a sudden, the hurdles just shrink, but they're not. You're picking up speed, and all of a sudden, you haven't adapted to it, and your turnover is it thinks it's getting ready to stretch out, and all of a sudden the hurdles don't move. They stay at 4 feet and you're speeding up. And so now the cool thing about it is you can turn your back and hear it. You hear pop, 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 pop. And so their pattern is changing. And so here's the deal I want to make a point of. When we are doing anything, and I mentioned this earlier, we say, if you make a mistake, recover, that's athletic. Okay. Kids, understandably, if they make a mistake on the ladder, the typical thing is to stop and kind of laugh and say, oh, I messed up. Don't stop. The worst thing you can do on the hurdles or the ladder is to stop. If you make a mistake, recover, that's athletic. And so if you just dump this mindset out there that everything we're doing is purposeful, then the response, the athletes just buy into it, and it just makes the program better.
Definitely. When you have a purpose for every action is going to have a result. And that result should be what you're looking for, right? How important is strength training in the development of speed and the athlete overall?
I will tell you this: strength training is critical. I will quote Remy Korchemi, who was back in the day while we were the Americans, we were just like the Eastern Europeans were the bomb. Man, these guys are awesome. So they were over here speaking all the time, and I sat in a room and listened to the Romanian and the Russian argue. It was pretty entertaining because I guess they could understand each other, but in the lecture before the argument, he said, and I quote, "You cannot be fast if you're not strong." And so there's no question that didn't turn me on to strength training because we were already doing it. But it's like, thank you for that endorsement. We do everything. We're going to bench, squat, deadlift. We do as many of the Olympics as is reasonable. The snatch is so coaching intensive. I don't do it except for a few advanced people, but we do our lift. We're typically a 3-day lift. We can do 4-day split. That's not a big deal, but I have so much I want to do that I don't want to spend it all in the weight room. But what I was alluding to earlier was 0 to 10, we sprint, then we lift. 0 to 30. And with our program, we tell them, the athletes, look, we're running in the summer, for example, let's say I round it off. We run at noon. Okay, period. If you want to come lift before or stay and lift after, that's up to you, because athletes have such different. And with the Cowboys, we did that. We had running groups, and guys come lift whenever because, oh, I don't want to lift after. Oh, I don't want to run before, whatever. And so I don't care. I've looked at it 14,000 different ways, and I don't think it matters. So as long as you're warmed up and ready to go, then you should be okay. And so what we end up doing is lifting, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We're running, 5 days a week, though, because we're on Monday through Thursday and then on Saturday. So the reason we don't run on Friday is I do save them, because if we have a big squat in our workout, it's Friday. If we're doing anything heavy duty, we trade it off, and so that we do complexes on Friday, where we do a lift, a jump, and a run, which is really a cool whole complex right there. And so we do the like squat, a weighted jump, a contrasted unweighted jump, and then some sprints. And so we try to, you mentioned this a minute ago, but the key to all of this is programming and rotating. And so I bring things in and out of the program. By no means do I want people to think that I don't do anything besides hurdles and ladders, but they are such an integral part of what we do. I have what we call I have doesn't matter, 4 or 5 speed bags. They all have the same contents of 12 hurdles, a ladder, I don't know, about 10 cones, and whatever else I've got in there. So we call it speed to go. If somebody calls, hey, I've got a soccer team, can you all come out and say, boom, get 2 speed bags, let's go. And so they just work with the masses, and they are productive. Now, as athletes advance, you have to challenge them. One of my favorite things is we will get medium weight being 6 or 8 pound medicine balls, and run with them. And we'll put a medicine ball in your hands, carry it waist high in the middle of your body, and your arms, your shoulders are going to do, you don't have any counterbalance. So they're going to just let them do what they want to do. They'll wiggle. And so we run with that to get their knees up. And then we'll run 7 yards, get rid of the ball, get your arms back, and take off. Then we'll get 2 medicine balls. So now both arms are restricted. You're 16 pounds heavier. And so we're getting a loaded type of run, making the contrast run much more significant and impressive. And then we do, like I said, bands, resistive, releases, etc. So we have the whole bag of tricks, I think.
Definitely. It certainly sounds that way, Bob. One of the things that it becomes kind of a common theme or topic when we talk about loaded running is pushing a sled pushes, sled pulls. They're kind of a very popular thing right now for internet trends and different CrossFit athletes and so on. How do you feel about sled training? Is that a great way to build the muscles needed for speed, or is it sort of I don't want to say a waste, but does it do less than people think it does?
A very politically sensitive question. I will say this, I use it. I mean, like I said, I don't think, if it's in our facility, I use it. If it's not in there, I'll go get it if I need it, or it's not important. Now, the sled is a tool in the toolbox. And so we mostly will push it. We do some towing. I have other devices and that's just resistance running. But here's the deal. We set it up to where we push the sled and we immediately go to the straightaway and hit the sprint, the contrast, always thinking contrast. And so let me think. I think it'll play more into our summer program for just a conditioning tool. I don't dislike it, but what I do dislike is I saw a summer brochure for a guy one year, and he showed a bunch of young athletes pushing the sleds. Well, the problem was he was promoting high school on down to middle school. So they took that many different athletes. I'm just going to be fairly accurate to say 8th grade through high school pushing a sled, but all the sleds had the same weight. That's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like,
seriously,
you got a big high school lineman with 90 pounds, and you've got an 8th grade basketball player with 90 pounds. Okay. You're fired.
Yeah.
And so the sled all these things have to be regulated. Okay. And so when I say regulated, here's the rule. What does it do to your mechanics? If your mechanics start to fail, then something's wrong. The drill's wrong. The resistance is wrong. And so there are alterations. Okay. I'm not, if you push an object, your whole stride is not going to go out to the normal stride speed length, but just watch it. Are you flat footed? Are you hitting your heel? Where's your posture? So speed, technique, and mechanics will dictate the value of the drill. So you got to be real careful when you're doing that.
Definitely. And I completely agree with everything you said. I've worked in facilities in the past that, everyone gets the sled, it seems. And it doesn't matter if it's athletes or the boot camp, everyone's pushing and pulling the sled that day. But there's never any individualization to the training, right? It's just, here's the workout and everyone's going to do it. And that never really waved my flag, so to speak, because you don't tailor your program design to the needs of the individual athlete in front of you. you have to find ways to cater to the masses, but also tailor your programming to the needs of an athlete. You know, if an athlete can't squat the parallel, then I'm not going to have them do front squats where their butt and hit depth where their butt is 2 or 3 inches off the ground, right? They can't do it.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to expect them to. And that's a huge element of programming that's just missing from so many schools and coaches and overall training programs, I think.
Well, if you're worth your salt as a coach, it's not hard to individualize it. You know, I say, well, everybody does it. Well, everybody does it the way they can, you know, the way they can do it if instruction wise. So, for example, in our facility, we have, you know, the squat racks, and if that bar is not friendly to them, we go put them on the bear squat to learn the posture and the position. And so it's a machine, but it's not going to hurt them. And you can watch the joints and all the posture take place as far as when they go down, where's their spine, where their hips, everything. And so you can safely teach them. And then we have other devices that we use. We have, as an example in our speed program, we have what we call the LGs. LGs are little guys and little girls. And so we have rules that go along with that. And so what I started doing, the speed program grew in those early days. We took, the ladder will separate everybody in a hurry. Icky shuffle. Oh, no. So we do not cater to the weak. We cater to the strong in our program. So what we do to amend that is we had an intro ladder. And so we would take the ladder, they break in half. And if depending on how far we had to go down, we'd have our veteran athletes on the long ladder, and we put the LGs and little girls, little guys on a half ladder, and just, you know, 1 step, 2 step, and just advance them as they could. Everybody can do the speed break, no big deal. And so we have, so it became LGs, little guys, little girls, and then it became new people. I'm not going to slow down a bunch of accomplished athletes while I teach, you know, a new person to do the icky shuffle. I had my assistant go to the training ladder and introduce something, or take the newbies and learn them at their pace, teach them at their pace so they could learn, and everybody's happy. They're not being run over by the veteran athletes, and veteran athletes aren't leaving because they're not getting any work. So it's real easy to fix these things.
Right. And especially with the strength pyramids that you were talking about earlier, right? This isn't just catering to the individual from a speed standpoint, but also a strength standpoint. You said you would do a compound movement, follow it with a lighter movement, maybe a plyometric, something for post-activation potential, and then a sprint. So, you know, you could think box squat or back squat right into a box jump, right into a short distance sprint, right? And maybe someone can't do a box squat, so you do a dumbbell goblet squat. Maybe someone is asymmetric, so, you know, they shift towards one direction during their squat, or when they jump, they really favor one side over the other. So maybe to correct that, you start doing lunges and jump lunges, so they have to use each leg individually.
Yes.
There's countless ways to individualize that programming, and again, to our point earlier, it just doesn't make sense for a good strength and speed coach to not tailor their program design to the specific athlete they're working with at that time.
Well, to go along with what I mentioned earlier, you know, we have our speed themes throughout the week. Our conditioning, depending on the athletes, because we had to package it up. Our conditioning matched the speed themes. And I'm coming back to the strength here in a second. The speed, you know, 0 to 10, we did shorter, you know, intervals on the conditioning. When we got into the meet, we swapped it. We did speed it. I like summer. It's the full meal deal. In summer, weeks 1 and 2, we're just getting into it. We're not assuming anybody has got a whole lot of background. They've maybe have come from spring training or whatever. So first 2 weeks, and what we discovered over time, we had a real nice retention. So we'd have kids come back or athletes come back the next summer. It's like, we got to speed this up. So now 1 week transition. And so we did a 2-week training turnover. So we'd be on a program for 2 weeks and change it. We didn't do any Olympics until probably the 2nd or 3rd week of June, and give them time to kind of get acclimated. Now, here's the way the themes go. On the weightlifting, we just did whatever I had scheduled for Monday. I mean, we would, bench and just depending on the athlete, because we have individual sheets, and it's so easy the way we do we gave our athletes, instead of putting it on a grease board, they had their own workout sheet, and it just had the heading on there: soccer strength 1, basketball strength 2, and stuff. And so the 1, 2, 3 just told me what level they were at. So it didn't mean anything to them, but it told me, oh, you've been on strength 2 for 2 weeks. We got to go to 3. And so we would dictate then the leg work for that. And so Monday was just a basic old strength day. The reps, schemes, that's a whole different story. Now, Wednesday was our balance day. And so it was dominated by a lot of dumbbell work: dumbbell incline, dumbbell press, dumbbell row, dumbbell combination, hammer press, whatever. So a lot of dumbbells, so we could expose, your right side is way overpowering your left. So it shows up with the dumbbell work, single leg, whatever we had on the schedule. Friday was that big lift day. We're just going to power it. We're going to squat big, or deadlift big. We're going to do whatever we're going to do big. As the summer progressed, we only did Olympics on Wednesday. Again, I'm doing a 3-day deal. We just did Olympics on Wednesday, and I took a deep breath with this. And again, you got to come back to the late 80s, early 90s when we developed this cycle. We never had a problem. Our Olympic guys, our Olympic lifts went up, because you're only lifting Olympics on Wednesday. Yeah. But we're not taking off the other 6 days. We're still lifting, running, and jumping. Now, let me just interrupt myself. I don't care where you are on the planet or another planet, and what language you speak or sport you coach, you do one of 3 things in your program. And this is where we use the whole LRJ. You either lift, you run, or jump. And you can tell me, no, we don't lift weights, we do bands. Oh, resistance training, you're lifting. Okay, just understand lifting is resistance training. Well, we don't really do bands or ladders or hurdles. We do this. Oh, you run. Okay, so just go right down the line. You lift or run or jump, or a combination of those, which LRJ is what we title our work with. And so when we do that, it helps us put everything into the right place. So on Wednesday, when we start doing the Olympic lifts, we're doing an explosive movement. So we're jumping a second day, even though we just typically do plyometrics on Friday. But wait a minute, we do hurdle hops and things. So we jump rope. Wait a minute, we're doing plyometrics all the time. So does it have to be a massive 32-inch box? Not quite. It can be a jump rope. It can be the hurdles. And so everything is connected, period. And so if we only do something once a week, that doesn't mean anything. It just means that when I visit schools or talk to coaches, a red flag goes up when they say, we do a lot of. Wait a minute, a lot of what now? Where's the rest of it? And so I don't do a lot of hurdle and ladders. That's a key part of our program. But on Tuesday and Thursday, change of direction days, I may just pour it on the hurdles and ladder, because we have a ton of drills that just facilitate that lateral movement. Monday and Wednesday, especially Wednesday, I may be on the hurdles 5 minutes and I'm off. And the rest of the program is all the big stuff. So it needs to be, context needs to be made so that people understand that we do as much as stuff we can to rotate stimulus. Number one, keep the body interested, and number two, keep the mind interested.
Definitely. I can't echo your point more about how everything in the body is interconnected, and we have to train it all together, right? A lot of athletes, they'll do this in the gym. They'll do this from a speed training standpoint. They'll try and separate everything out, right? Today's going to be my arm day, and then they're going to go to practice and do their training and so on. And then today is going to be, shoulder day, and the next day will be chest day. And, they work everything in isolation. And even some coaches might encourage that from what I've seen. And again, like you said, everything is interconnected. Athletes don't go on the field. No one walks onto the football field and decides they're only going to use their arms that day or only their legs that day. That's not how sports work. And there's a huge differentiation between, the training that a lot of people end up doing for sports. So what we would kind of consider more of like a either powerlifting or bodybuilding type approach, depending on where you're at and who your coach is. There tends to be biases towards those two training styles. when in reality, athletes need to
Yes.
use everything together. They need to work their various stabilization subsystems. They need to work the serapes, which are the rotational muscular connections in the body. They need to do sport-specific movement patterns repeatedly that work the muscles that they specifically need in the manner that they specifically need for the sport, specific adaptation to impose demand, like we talked before. And like I said, I'll kind of circle back on myself now. It's just crazy to me how misunderstood training for athletes, especially when it comes to speed, is. There's people that I've worked with in the past who have just kind of said, we're going to do weighted jump squats and push a sled and do some jumps, and we're going to call it speed training. And, that's great. But when you do that twice a week, no one's actually getting better. There's no intention. There's no actual sprinting going into it. Some people wouldn't even break out a ladder and they call it speed training. So I think this is certainly a topic that needs to have light shed on it. And someone like you, who's been in the industry for, literally longer than I've been alive, is certainly the guy to do it.
Careful now. Careful. I get, I just want people to understand it. Here's what I tell, whoever, it depends on the context. In our program, here's what we say. Football players play football. Basketball players play basketball. Soccer players play soccer, and on and on. Athletes do whatever they want. And so we try to think athletic development is our key. Now we've got programs to address whatever. My offensive linemen that I train, that I have any, we have plenty of 400-pound squatters and 300-plus-pound bench pressers. We got all that. And maybe that's not a heavy weight in some people's world, but the development we do, they're headed that way because they may go off to college and crack a new barrier. But when they do go off to college, they're totally prepped. They're not, we quiz them when they come back in May from college. Well, how was it? Did you pass your test? Did you do okay? And the coach says, fine. And I will take the college summer training programs, get these things that guys have written monuments to themselves. I say, okay, let me translate this. I'm going to show you how to do these because they're not in our program and you will be expected to do it, but I'll show you how to do these movements. But we're really not going to do this. And we crush the test anytime they go back and they are successful in their field or quarter play. And it's just a matter of, it's not me, it's the athletes executing a program designed to make you faster, stronger. And I don't care about bigger, because if you're faster and stronger, you play bigger. And so that's how that kind of plays out.
That's definitely true. I think back again to high school football. Our nose guard on the team was a 155-pound wrestler, right? And you look at offensive linemen that he's going up against, they're, 270, 280, and he's pushing them around all over the place because he had the strength. Like you said, when you have the strength and the speed, you play bigger.
Well, back to the pro days for a minute. Like I said, I coached high school sports for 20 years. So it's not like I dabbled. I was in it. And I'm a member of the Texas High School Coach Association, the whole 9 yards. So I'm in it to win it. The deal is you learn stuff. I had a NBA coach, one of my Maverick coaches. We went through so many of them. We were doing pre-draft training and evaluation, or getting a guy. It didn't matter. We get a guy in, and over time on multiple sports, and especially in football with the linemen and the big men in basketball, I had two questions I had coaches could ask me. So if I say, Coach, this guy can squat 500, he can bench 400. He's got a 93-inch vertical jump, and I could list all that stuff. Coaches trump me every time. Two questions. How's his feet? Can he play? How's his feet? Can he play? And so that just resonated because I had no choice. I wasn't the decision maker. I mean, I have pulled the trigger on guys in the NBA draft and said, this guy we want, and because I worked them out and compared to players. But the deal is, the coach is going to say, how's his feet? Can he play? And all those other numbers, they are test numbers and things are important. It's important for the athlete's mindset, and it's important for the strength coach to be able to evaluate the progress of the program. So if you don't test, you don't know if you're going anywhere. But that's not the end all. So how's his feet and can he play? Can he play? Not my department. So now, the feet, definitely my department. So game on, so to speak.
Definitely. Bob, you've shared so much amazing insight and knowledge about your training programs and how to coach speed. Where can people find more? Because I know you have a great online presence and you share a lot of this same insight, and you work with athletes and coaches across the world, really, to help them develop their own kind of coaching approaches and learn from the system that you implement. Where can people find out more about you?
Well, you can go to kingsportstraining.com. We have a pretty hefty website. Excuse me. My oldest son is my producer, director, and all, and he has done a great job of uploading us a really great website. King Sports Training on YouTube. We have I don't know, hundreds of videos available for all the drills, and I'm talking and stuff. At Coach Bob King, we're on Instagram and other platforms that. Just look for at Coach Bob King, and we show up all over the place. But the two big ones I like for me personally is we have Twitter going, and I've started loading some of the shorter TikToks. So look for Coach Bob King, and we're all over the place.
You're on TikTok. That's impressive, Bob.
Yeah, my Aaron he's the guy. He's got me putting out these little, whatever they are, 15, 30-second shots. So it's a new world for the old coach.
Definitely. Do you have any kind of closing thoughts that you want to share with our listeners about speed and strength and all the different things that we've talked about?
Let me make a comment, and I want the people hear this, or I'm told this, and I want to qualify the statement. And it's this: well, you can't make anybody faster. And it's like, okay, wait a second, that has to be a qualified statement. So when it comes to talking about speed, I never tell anybody that, well, I just can't make anybody faster. Why? Well, if mechanics produce efficiency and efficiency produces speed and speed exposes flaws, then we can do things to help you individually become faster. I didn't say anything about the Olympics. I didn't say anything about pro sports, but how can I make you faster than you yesterday? So yes, you have that genetic code, that genetic programming that basically you're stuck with it. But my job is to pull everything out of you that you have, not to just predetermine that, you got the short end of the speed stick. I don't work like that. So I encourage everybody to make the attempt. Go see how much faster you can make yourself. How's your feet?
Great. Awesome advice, Bob. Thank you again for your time and for coming on and sharing all of your, again, valuable knowledge and insight with our listeners. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate your time.
That's going to do it for today's episode of the Brawn Body Health and Fitness Podcast. If you liked this episode, please make sure to subscribe to the show so you don't miss any of our upcoming exciting episodes. And please make sure you check us out on social media at Brawn Body on all platforms. I'd also really appreciate it if you left a review and shared this episode with a friend. The more reviews we get and the more people we get the word out to about the podcast, the more people we can help make positive changes in their personal health and fitness. Thank you as always for your support, and looking forward to giving you another exciting episode next week.